I'll call the meeting to order. Municipal Council of the District of Lunenburg on Tuesday, May 27th. It's 9 a.m. and I think all councilors are present. We have Councillor DeLong will be absent from our meeting, and we will begin with an acknowledgement that we are in Mi'kma'ki, the traditional territory of the Mi'kmaq people, and we welcome everyone here this morning to take part in our meeting. I think Tom has one announcement to start the announcements, acknowledgements, and recognition.
Thank you, Mayor. So today I would like to introduce David Ferguson, the new district commander for the RCMP, and I'd invite David to come up to the podium and say a few words.
Thank you, Tom. Appreciate the introduction. As you said, my name is David Ferguson, the new district commander for Lunenburg District RCMP. I have 23 years service with the RCMP currently, going into my 24th year. I've had the opportunity to serve in Newfoundland and Labrador, North Coast of Labrador, Nunavut over the years. It's been, the northern detachments have been a great adventure, and we landed here in Lunenburg County back in 2012 with my family, my wife, and 3 children, and absolutely fell in love with the South Shore. So I had an opportunity to move to West Hants, where I promoted from, this is my second tour in Lunenburg County actually. I was previously with the Street Crime Enforcement Unit here, did about 4 years there, integrated with Bridgewater Police Service, and then went to West Hants as the commander over there. So coming from West Hants, it's one of the more unique policing agreements that we have within Nova Scotia, being a municipal policing contract, municipal policing agreement. I think it's beneficial for me to have that experience coming back here to Lunenburg District, where there's several towns, municipalities that fall under the Provincial Policing Service Agreement. So I think I've gained a lot of insight, a lot of knowledge over the nuances and the differences between the different types of policing agreements that we have. So I will say I'm extremely happy that my commute has gone from 1 hour each way to about 1 minute and 30 seconds. So I get 2 hours of my day back every day. I actually live next door to Tom down in Pine Grove. So, so extremely happy to be back here in Lunenburg County. Like I said, we fell in love with the South Shore. So yeah, it's a pleasure to be back here. I look forward to working with the Police Advisory Board, the Mayor and Council in relation to policing services moving forward.
Thank you, and we welcome you back to working in the area, and look forward to working with you as we embark on some new things with the Police Advisory Committee is revamped, and we'll work through that process and appointees and the work that it will oversee. So if anyone has any questions, I think you'd be happy to take them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. Okay, thank you very much.
Made it easy.
There'll be questions, believe me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I look
Yeah.
forward to it.
Yeah, good.
All
Thanks.
right. Thank you, everybody.
Are there other acknowledgements, recognitions? Councillor Brooks and then Councillor Smith.
I just wanted to say that I attended Saturday night at the Old Confidence Lodge in Riverport. There was the Lunenburg Community Symphony, which was it's barely 1 year old, and it was a creation of a couple of the musicians who were part of it. It's all different skill ranges, but it was a wonderful performance and a really, really cool community time. If you haven't checked out the Confidence Lodge, go check out and see what they're doing. They're doing some really neat things down there.
Councillor Smith.
On June 1st, Atlantic Water Network, working in partnership with Rural Water Watch with funding from the Lunenburg County Community Fund, will hold a Healthy Wells Day event at the Parkdale Maplewood Community Center. This event provides low-cost well water tests, education, and support with the sample collection process, understanding lab results and next steps, and they're inviting people to pick up sample bottles from 10 a.m. to noon, take them home and fill them, and then return them between 12 and 2 p.m., and they'll take care of the rest. I participated in a Healthy Wells Day event in Walden last fall, and it's a really great opportunity to learn more about the how and why of water testing. And I encourage everyone to take advantage of this opportunity in that area. And there'll also be a testing event the following week in Blockhouse on June 8th.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I just want to mention that yesterday I did a community visit to a constituent who was celebrating her 95th birthday. What is unique about this individual is that she served on MODL Council for 24 years, was the first female to be elected in MODL, and also was the first female deputy warden on the South Shore. Her name is Pauline Hilleman.
Any other Councillor Burns.
I just wanted to say a thank you to the LaHave River Salmon Association, who in partnership with us put on the annual Kids Fishing Derby on Saturday at the Market. It was a spectacular event. There was a lot of intergenerational attendance there, a lot of grandparents, parents, and kids, but of note was the amount of people that I would say that were 5 and under, probably getting a little bit of a spark for fishing, something we all enjoy here on the South Shore. So what a wonderful event, and thank you to the LaHave River Salmon Association and our own folks.
Any other acknowledgements? Okay. We do have a proclamation, and it's very appropriate for this municipality, as we are rich in our abundance of parks and recreation areas. Whereas in the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, we are fortunate to have a variety of recreation services and a vibrant park system, providing many opportunities for residents and visitors to be active and explore this beautiful province. And whereas participating in recreational activities helps strengthen the bonds of family and friendships, enhances spirit, helps children and youth develop a positive self-image, strengthens volunteer and community development, and whereas our parks, open spaces, and trails ensure ecological beauty, provides places to enjoy nature, help maintain clean air and water, preserve Mi'kma'ki where we live, work, and play, and preserve plant and animal wildlife. Therefore, be it resolved that the municipality of the District of Lunenburg does hereby proclaim the month of June 2025 to be Parks and Recreation Month, to recognize and celebrate the year-round benefits of recreation and parks at the local, regional, and provincial level. Therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor Elspeth McLean-Weil, on behalf of the municipality of the District of Lunenburg, do hereby proclaim June 2025 as Parks and Recreation Month. And I encourage all of us and people who may be listening to visit one of our parks during the month, and certainly during the rest of the year, but particularly through June. Things are getting very green and lush, and it is a time to enjoy parks and our trails. This is a time for public input, and I know I don't see anyone in the gallery that is going to take part in the public input portion, but I will remind those who are watching or listening that we do provide an opportunity at all our meetings to hear from the public, and we encourage public participation in conveying concerns and questions that may lie with members of our community. So we hope people will continue to take advantage of that as we move on. If we move to our number 4 item, which is the approval of the agenda, are there any additions or to the agenda? If not, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Councillor Bell. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Hubley. All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. The minutes from the public hearing of May 13th, 2025 have been circulated. Are there any corrections or additions that need to be made to those? I don't see anyone, so we'll approve those minutes as circulated. Business arising from the minutes.
We did have some public input on May 13th. There were 2 citizens who came forward and provided input on 3 different topics. First, both residents spoke about the neighborhood nuisance bylaw, which was on the agenda. So that allowed council to consider that input before making a decision there. So it's wonderful to see residents attuned to what's on the agenda and coming to speak about that. There were 2 more topics that weren't covered on the agenda, so I'd just like to provide a little bit of information on those. The first one was around the Blue Route. So a local resident had noted that Highway 332 had been designated and advertised as a blue route, but there aren't adequate cycling facilities for a large number of cyclists as well as car traffic. And the resident asked that council write to the province to inquire why it is a blue route. So our Recreation, Parks and Tourism staff did get in touch just to make sure we had accurate information for council. I'll just share some highlights from that at this time. So the Blue Route, for those who aren't aware, is a province-wide cycling project. It's led by Cycling Nova Scotia. Its goal is to create a continuous network of cycling infrastructure. When an area becomes part of the Blue Route, it's promoted by Cycling Nova Scotia and signage is installed along the road or trail, but there's no funding that comes along with it. It does sometimes impact cost sharing for the municipality, however. So if an area is designated as a Blue Route and then it's getting refinished, there is the opportunity for the province fully at their cost rather than cost sharing to have the shoulders expanded so that there are paved shoulders for cyclists. More information on the Blue Route is available on the web. You can just put in modl.ca and you'll get that information. In terms of the criteria for selecting, there are a number of features, some of which are relevant to the Highway 332. They look for scenic views and topographic qualities that lend themselves to special cycling experiences, which I'm assuming just means it's pretty. Fancy way to say it's pretty. The existence of established routes, so if there's places that there are a lot of cyclists already. They try to provide a diversity of route types so that they can accommodate different skills and types of cyclists. And the potential to provide safe and comfortable bicycling experiences based on existing conditions and also the feasibility of upgrading infrastructure to an appropriate level of service in the future. So they look at what's the condition of the road, but also is there potential for expanding it. And I believe we've had some experience with this along the road to Blue Rocks, which is obviously a very scenic and beautiful area. And it didn't necessarily have the conditions at the time, but they were doing some refurbishing. And there's question about the potential because of the width of the road and the right-of-way and its proximity to the ocean. So some of the things that they're looking for are roads where the speed limit is no higher than 80 kilometers an hour, and also places where there's at least an adequate base to provide paved shoulders in the future, but it is not a requirement for a Blue Route to have paved shoulders or even to have the capability of having paved shoulders. So with that information, staff don't see any further need for action on this item. If a councillor did want to have further discussion, there's always the opportunity to add something via the agenda request process. The second item was on wayfinding and a traffic flagging issue. So the resident had raised a concern with an MODL contractor and had some local procurement questions related to that. But the primary concern was that they had noted that there was work taking place in the provincial road right-of-way that should have had a flagging crew. As soon as we were provided with this information, Parks, Tourism and Recreation staff got in touch with the contractor and directed them to stop all work within the provincial right-of-way until we had confirmed that they had appropriate and comprehensive traffic safety plan that met Nova Scotia requirements. The contractor actually did confirm that they were out there working, and it was later determined that they had been using New Brunswick rules, which didn't quite meet Nova Scotia standards. So we were very thankful to the resident for providing this information. We were able to correct a potential safety issue. based on their information. And we have followed up and thanked the resident directly. It was very helpful to get that information. And can also confirm that the contractor now does have an appropriate safety plan that meets Nova Scotia regulations. In relation to the local procurement implications, there's two things that we did want to relay on this front. The first is that as of last week, MJSB has now hired a procurement specialist as a shared service offered to the municipal partners. We're very excited about this because one of the first things on their work plan will be to work to harmonize our procurement policy as much as possible with the other units. So that will make it easier for local contractors because they'll be able to bid on work and know the process, whether they're working with MODL or with one of the towns that we're partnered with there. But also, they'll be working on how we can improve information about how to bid on local contracts among our local contractors, and how we can improve the opportunity for local bidders to navigate that process. And then the second element is with all of the trade disruption that's happening globally and the evolving trade agreement implications, MJSB is going to be working on providing us with information on increasing the thresholds for local procurement. So currently, our procurement policy limits council's ability to provide a scoring benefit for local companies under thresholds based on pre-existing trade agreements when council passed those budgets. Obviously, the environment of international trade and the requirements, therefore, around local procurements are changing. And so we're optimistic that we should be able to change those thresholds so that council will be able to provide greater benefit on larger contracts where we have a local contractor. So you can expect to see some reports on our procurement policy itself coming in the next year or so as the procurement specialist gets on board. So it was a really nice set of public input, and other than the procurement report, we don't have any other follow-ups.
I'll just comment on the Blue Route. Councillor Brooks and I have spoken of this, and I would suggest Councillor Brooks bring this forward as an item. The Blue Route from the Riverport Bridge to Lunenburg is absolutely a wonderful ride. I've done it many times. The ride from the Riverport Bridge to Bridgewater is terrifying, and I've done it many times. So there is no shoulder, and you literally come off the pavement into a drop of 6 to 8 inches. So it is dangerous, and I think the concern that Councillor Brooks and I shared with each other was that if we're promoting this as an area to cycle, this is not, it's a beautiful ride. It's one of the nicest rides you'll go in the world, I think. But it's dangerous, and we're promoting it in a way that's very misleading for people who may come into the community. And it's not only us that have spoken of this, but some of the cycling groups that I bump into from time to time have raised it with me as to why that is designated as a blue route. So I think we do need to really look at the section of that route from the Riverport Bridge to Bridgewater. So Councillor Brooks, I know, well, he's nodding his head. He's going to bring it forward. So we'll follow up on that. All right. We do have a presentation, and it is 9:19. So we'll skip over a few things and move down and invite Mr. Quigley to come forward and make his presentation.
Mayor, councillors, thank you very much for allowing me to speak about this project today. My name is Christopher Quigley. I'm the Executive Director and Creative Director of Alchemia Art Workshop, a new nonprofit that is based in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia, that's dedicated to producing transformative public art that directly
Do you want to just raise your...
Yes.
Yeah, you might be more comfortable, and you'll come closer to the mic. We want to make sure. That's great. Thank you.
Okay. We're dedicated to producing transformative public art that directly engages the public with urgent social issues. And today I want to introduce a project that meets one of the most pressing public and safety and human rights issues, gender-based violence and intimate partner violence. The project is called Transformation of Dangerous Spaces. It's a traveling public art installation that confronts men with the uncomfortable realities of power, privilege, consent, and complicity through a highly immersive, interactive, multi-sensory experience. The project that was actually, I met with Kellyanne Hamshaw, director of Harbor House, to talk about housing originally, just housing. But what unfolded between us was something else entirely. We didn't know at the time, but that conversation would become the catalyst for Transformation of Dangerous Spaces. And what began as small talk turned into real talk about gender-based violence, about the systems that fail women, and the system that fails men. This was created out of grief. Elaine Mosher died in my community, and this was my call to come to the table and have a voice and provide some input as a man. And it also has a deep personal connection, and the topic isn't abstract or distant for me. It isn't metaphorical. It's historical. And it's close to home, and this project is rooted in lived experience, and it is my way of turning something that was remarkably painful into something that might help others. Transformation of Dangerous Spaces is an 8-stall immersive experience designed to mimic familiar gendered environments like public restroom stalls, places that are private, transitional, and often overlooked. But instead of ordinary stalls, each one becomes a confrontational installation that explores a different facet of gender-based violence and intimate partner violence. There are 8 of them, but I'm only going to highlight 3 in the essence of time. The first that I'll talk about is called the one-way mirror stall. It is a stall that replicates the feeling of being watched and judged, and just as survivors are when they speak up. The locker room stall will immerse participants in recorded misogynistic locker room talk, exposing how male socialization has developed and evolved from an analog space to today's digital isolation that normalizes harm. The confessional stall will project anonymous male confessions onto the wall, building a collective reckoning of complicity that participants can add to. And finally, the 21-second stall is one that will count down silence before chaos erupts, a stark reminder about how fast violence can escalate and how critical intervention is. Each experience is designed not to shame, but to awaken, to turn passive observation into responsibility. Each stall is designed to simulate psychological pressure using sound, light, text, projection, motion sensors. This is not a passive experience, it's a reckoning. 1 in 3 women in Canada experience intimate partner violence. That is a public health crisis. That is a justice issue. And yes, that's a local government issue. And despite decades of tireless advocacy, education, and awareness campaign, the numbers remain stubborn. Men need to be part of the conversation as well. This project helps change that. It invites men into the dialogue in a way that's direct, human, and impossible to look away from. This project is just one person's response to that call, one man's response to that call, an attempt to show up, to listen, and take responsibility. It doesn't pretend to have all the answers, but it begins where real change starts, with accountability, vulnerability, and a willingness to feel something. We're inviting men into discomfort, to feel something, raw, real, maybe even unbearable, to sit in the mess, to stay there, to lose the illusion of control, and be accountable, to confront themselves, not in theory, but in the bones, because facts don't change people, shame doesn't either, but experience, that cuts deep, and that lingers. And only when change starts in the gut does it rise to the surface into policy and into justice. This isn't just an art piece, it is policy in motion, and it integrates directly with federal and provincial and municipal gender-based violence prevention frameworks, public safety strategies, and municipal outreach and community wellness mandates. It also includes evaluation tools, visitor feedback, impact tracking, and optional facilitated discussions with community educators, trauma therapists, and partner organizations like shelters and transition homes. This project is designed to travel to communities all across Canada, giving each one the opportunity to host, respond, and participate. We are actively engaging and collaborating with over 70 organizations across Canada, advocacy groups, and funding bodies, locally, provincially, nationally, and internationally. These partners and supporters recognize the urgency of this work and are aligned with our mission to drive systemic change by beginning with something deeply human, a visceral, educational, artistic experience. In 2023, there were 123,319 police-reported intimate partner violence incidents in Canada, equating to about 338 incidents a day, or about 1 every 4 minutes. Women and girls accounted for 78% of these. It's important to note that many instances of intimate partner violence go unreported, and that self-reported data from 2018 indicated that 44% of women and girls who had been in an intimate partner relationship experienced some form of abuse in their lifetime. Because violence doesn't end when a woman reports it. It ends when men stop allowing it to happen. That's the hard truth, and this project aims to tell it. What we're seeking now are municipal and provincial partners to help us host the installation in the community, provide in-kind support like space, staff facilitation, and promotion, assist with funding connections, and endorse the project as a vital initiative aligned with your community's values. We're not asking you to fund the project, but your written support and your written endorsement can help us unlock provincial arts and justice grants and open doors to other institutions. This is an opportunity to lead, not to react, to say that our town stands for safety, justice, and accountability. Transformation of dangerous spaces is about acknowledgement. It's about breaking the silence. It's about standing in the discomfort long enough to understand what others endure daily. And it's about initiating change, real change, emotional change, cultural change. And we believe that every community has dangerous spaces, and every community has the power to transform them. Thank you very much.
I presume you'll take questions?
Yes, please.
Yes. Any questions? Well, Councillor Smith.
Sorry, did you want to go ahead?
Sure, I will. Can you just give a little bit of your own personal background that would contribute to this project and your expertise that would
Absolutely.
develop this idea?
For the past 20 years, I have run my own company. We are a custom fabrication company called Agency Custom. We have built some very large public art pieces. Currently, I just finished completing a project in New York for South Street Seaport, redoing all of the historical lighting. I'm doing a 38-story facade on a building in Richmond, Virginia for a property development company called CoStar. I've done countless casino jobs, and we have been involved in a project that's in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the largest outdoor chandelier. Just a little note, but this is something that came about from, I had a stroke in 2023, and when the lights came on, I saw the world differently. And for the past 20 plus years, I have been creating other people's work. And this came about as to me wanting to start to create my own and exercise my own creativity and my own voice. And when I met with Kellyanne Hamshaw, this opportunity arose out of a number of conversations. We call it our Waiting for Godot conversations. If you've ever seen the play or the movie, I don't recommend it, it's very long. But we just kind of had our Waiting for Godot moments and had this project be born out of that.
Thanks so much for your presentation, Christopher. I do want to say I so appreciate your passion and your ambition and sticking your neck out on this, because it's a very challenging topic, and there's not a lot of men in this space. So thank you for really charging forward with this. We've had some conversations before, and I am, a bit concerned about the trauma factor with this installation, and I know that you have spoken to some, feminist organizations and talked about including, trauma-informed therapy, that kind of thing. I'm a huge fan of the Gothic in art and horror, and, this project, has aspects of that, like, to be, I hope you don't mind me saying this,
Not at
but
all.
it feels like a haunted house with a social justice, aspect to it. And I take these things very seriously. There's a lot of the Gothic in my work and a lot of social justice in my work. So I don't say that to trivialize your project whatsoever. I think it's a valid approach. And these approaches are often used to shock people into feeling something, as you've said. But it can also really release repressed trauma. And I think that's my concern, is that, like, you're giving people these very visceral experiences in closed spaces. And yeah, I just, I just wonder if you thought about, say, piloting the project to see how it goes before you make it too big, or somehow trying it out before, expanding it too far. Because I know you've got huge plans for taking this across the country and that kind of thing. Anyway. And also, I think I spoke to you about talking to men's organizations, because they would probably have some really good input on this.
Thank you. Was there a question?
Well, I guess the question around men's organizations.
I have reached out.
And the second question was
Yes.
around, have you thought about piloting the idea to see how people respond to it, and maybe what you need to build in from there?
I hadn't thought about a pilot project. This was the project, this was the vision, this was the direction that was just the one that we took. As far as the men's organizations that are dealing with IPV and gender-based violence, yes, I have reached out to them. I have several times. Not a lot of response to date. But the women's organizations across the country have been more than helpful in having a hand in guiding the direction of this and its development. One of the best endorsements that I just received was from Sue Bookchin from the Be the Peace Institute. And she had introducing, like, hey, this is like you said, a very visceral, very emotional piece. And have you considered having on-site trauma therapists to walk people through, so that there is a heightened level of consent to the piece, because it is going to be in public spaces. However, there has to be some explicit consent before entering this, and having somebody at the beginning and having groups at the end go through with a therapist or a community leader in that realm to debrief after the piece. So that has been included in this as at least some sort of a measure of trauma-informed practice, and having somebody on site in every community and having somebody from that community facilitate that.
Councillor Hubley?
Thank you. I don't really have a question, just a few comments. I went to school with Elaine, so I felt it also. Thank you for the presentation. It's very important and it's needed. In the presentation, you stated 1 in 3 women experience intimate partner violence, and I believe that it's much higher. So this is something I support, and I hope the rest of council can jump on board and publicly support it also.
Thank you very much.
Other questions that people have? Councillor Reinhardt.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and for the work you're doing in this area. I was just wondering if you knew of any examples like this that had been done in any other parts of the world or parts of the country that, and maybe what were some of the results and challenges from those?
I have not found anything close to this. This is a very unique approach, a very different approach, and I don't think I'm replicating, and I don't believe it's derivative of another project. And just to your point, I really appreciate the fact that you said it was kind of like a haunted house, going through a haunted house. That I too have a real affinity for that genre of film, and it impacts a lot of the things that I produce and the way that my mind works and the way that I see the world. And with this was a lot of the things that were in this are from my own experience growing up. I grew up in a little tiny town called Portage La Prairie, Manitoba. It was at the time when I was there about 8,000 to 10,000 people. I was 13 or 14 years old, and I was the only gay kid in school. And a lot of the things that I experienced in school was a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, a lot of physical abuse, not only just from students, but from teachers. And this is a little bit of that, of a reckoning of these are things that I experienced, that I went through, and what happens in there is a horror show. It is horrific, the things that happen, and the language that's used, and the vernacular that's passed along from generation to generation. And we're now seeing a generation of young men and boys behind closed doors, behind a screen. And the rhetoric and the violence that they're exposed to now is at a level that I didn't have when I was a young man. But the trauma is still there, and the violence was still there. So I just, that comment about it being kind of like a haunted house really, actually I took it as a great compliment, because it is. I think that would have been part of it was not going to be explicit, but I'm sure that with my history, that is an implicit part of this piece, is to inject some horror, because it is. That's the reality. That's the reality so many of us have had to live with. Men and women have had to live with that level of horror. So I just wanted to put that into a physical space.
Other questions people have? Thank you for your presentation. It's very impactful. We've had discussions here about our role as a municipal government in attacking the social issue around gender-based violence, and what you're bringing to us today is another aspect of it, and how we deal with it as a community. Clearly, we have unfortunately, too many examples in our own immediate community of gender-based violence, and we know that the numbers are very large. So your attempt to create something, especially as a male coming forward, is commendable, as that's the silent part of the problem in many cases. So thank you for this. We will consider this as a council. We don't make a decision today, but we will consider this, and we wish you well in your work.
Thank you very much.
It's lovely to meet you today. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you all.
We will move on the agenda to awarding of tenders and the award of RFP for the Cookville sidewalk expansion. Mr. Richardson and Mr. Burgess. Having just recently walked that piece, I completely understand why we need sidewalks. You take your life in your hands.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. I'm Tyler Richardson, Municipal Engineer here at the municipality, and with me is Jamie Burgess, Senior Municipal Engineer. We're here to discuss the award of RFP 2025-05405 Cookville Sidewalk Expansion, Design, Construction, and Contract Administration Services. So as a bit of a background, this RFP will secure an engineering design firm to provide detailed design of sidewalk infrastructure, potential traffic signals, and beautification elements such as benches, trees, shrubs, and streetlights in Osprey Village. The proposed sidewalk expansion project will provide a continuous sidewalk along the roads which surround the Municipal Services Building and Stonemont development, which will improve access to the shops and services within Osprey Village area. So these sidewalks would go along Nathan Cirillo and the Pine Grove Road, creating a continuous sidewalk around the block. The RFP was issued on April 24th, 2025, and closed on May 8th, 2025 at 2 p.m. local time. We received 2 proposals by the deadline. We received a proposal from Design Point Engineering and Surveying Limited and EXP Services Incorporated. Design Point was successful in our RFP evaluated rubric. We did have a slight error in our cost proposal within there. The 20 points for the 20% value was misassigned to EXP and should be for Design Point, just as a note. The expansion of the Osprey Village sidewalk aligns with Council's strategic priority of infrastructure, upgrades, expansion, and management. And the allowance for this cost of this project has been included in the 2025-2026 capital budget. It is the intent of the Engineering and Public Works Department at MODL to have the sidewalk expansion design completed in 2025 to enable tendering in early 2026 for a spring construction. So as a recommendation, we recommend that Council authorize staff to award RFP 2025-05-405 Cookville Sidewalk Expansion Design, Construction, and Contract Administration Services to Design Point Engineering and Surveying Limited in the estimated amount of $273,106, excluding HST.
Are there pieces of information any counselor needs on this before we have someone put the motion on the floor? I don't see any. Would someone propose the motion? Counselor Burns.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council award RFP 2025-05-405 Cookville Sidewalk Expansion, Design, Construction, and Contract Administration Services to Design Point Engineering and Surveying Limited in the amount of $273,106, excluding HST.
Is there a seconded by Counselor Bell? Is there a discussion on the motion? Counselor Oikel.
Kind of a two-part question through you to the gentleman. When is the expected work to be completed? And is the company who's presently cleaning and looking after the present sidewalk, their contract, will that presently also include the whole sidewalk? Or will there need to be more?
This is just the design work.
Oh, just the
Oikel.
design work, not
Yeah.
the construction. Okay. All right. Just said it's, okay. All right.
The work is completed next year. Yep. That answer your question? Okay.
It does, thank you.
Any other question? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. We'll move on to the award of tender for the construction support services for Miller Point Peace Park Accessibility Trail. Ms. Butts.
Good morning. Thank you, Mayor and Council. The 2025-26 approved capital budget includes the construction of a new accessible trail in Miller Point Peace Park, as well as enhancements to existing trails and features to improve accessibility within the space. To support project delivery, staff distributed RFP for design, tender, and construction support services to engineering firms on the municipality's standing offer list. 2 proposals were received and evaluated by the deadline by EXP and Design Point. The technical scoring was consistent between both proponents, and the recommendation for award of the services to Design Point is the result of the more cost-effective fee schedule. awarding the RFP for the contract for design, tender, and construction support services to Design Point Engineering and Surveying Limited will enable MODL to work towards having a design package ready to tender for the construction of the accessible improvements within Miller Point Peace Park.
Someone put the motion on the floor, and then we can have a discussion or answer to any questions, please.
I can do that.
Councillor Wickle, thank you.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council award RFP 2025-01404 Design, Tender, and Construction Support Services for Miller Point Peace Park Accessible Trail to Design Point Engineering and Surveying Limited in the amount of $49,960, excluding HST, and I so move.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Reinhardt. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Wickle.
Okay, so it says design, tender, and construction support. So they're going to design it, but they're not going to build it. They're just going to help with the construction support. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so I just wanted to clarify before, because you said that the $273,000 before was just for design, but it's not just for design, right? From our previous one?
Generally, when we hire engineering support, as long as it's a large enough capital project, the design firm completes the design and then participate during the construction period, but their role is confirming that it's being constructed as designed. So when you see that construction support, it's not that they're out there working as a contractor, it's that they're supervising to make sure that the construction is happening as it was supposed to.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to clarify because it was said that it was for the $200,000 was just for design. All right, yeah, thanks.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just wondering about Design Point being awarded both of these, or being recommended for both of these contracts. Are there any efficiencies involved with us working with the same company on two different projects at the same time, even though they're so different? And have we been working with this company on other projects?
Design Point has been on the municipality's standing offer list for engineering consulting firms for quite some time, and we recently have a renewed list that has been posted, and they are again a consulting firm on our standing offer list for engineering and consulting services. And the two RFPs were separate from one another and evaluated separately, so that it's very possible that they could both have different team compositions based on specialties and unique elements of each project. So it's not necessarily that it would be the same staff team from Design Point working on both projects simultaneously based on the unique differences between the project types.
Other questions? All those in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. Move on to the award of RFP for the supply of 2 half-ton trucks. Mr. Pace.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. The 2025-26 approved capital budget included the purchase of a recreation truck to support park and tourism services, as well as a truck for wastewater services. The engineering's current Ford Lightning, that's an electric truck, could be better utilized by the recreation department because of its unique power supply, and that supports going into events and so on. So management decided to reallocate the truck from engineering to recreation and procure 2 new trucks for the engineering department. So a request for proposals was issued May 1st and closed on May the 15th. And in the RFP, or the request for proposals, we invited all the proponents to submit proposals for all types of vehicles, gas, diesel, hybrid, and electric. And proponents were actually encouraged and permitted to submit multiple proposals. Proposals were received by 4 proponents. There was Bruce Chevrolet Buick GMC Limited, Mosier Motors, O'Regan Chev Buick, and Saunders Motors. All proposals were received before the closing date and time. The technical proposals were evaluated based on meeting the requirements in the RFP, and they included a company profile, a value-added warranty, delivery schedule, environmental impact, like fuel efficiency, GHG emissions, and maintenance schedules and costs. And the technical scoring was given a weighting of 75, and the financial proposals were given a weighting of 25. So the summary you'll see in the table there, the different scores. O'Regan's Chev Buick had the highest overall ranking for both trucks, and their proposed trucks had the lowest cost. One was $56,969, and the other one was $55,569 plus net HST, giving them the highest price score available. So from a budget perspective, in the 2025 approved capital budget, we included $85,000 for each of the two vehicles for a total of $170,000. As also I'll note, the purchase of the two gas half-ton trucks will not enhance Council's climate action strategic priority. It's a neutral. We're replacing gas with gas. So the recommendation, Council authorized staff to award RFP 2025-05-400 supply of two half-ton trucks to O'Regan Chevrolet Buick GMC Cadillac Limited in the amount of $116,879.04, including net HST.
Questions? Councillor Bell.
Thank you. In a recent budget that was passed, there was a request by Recreation for a possible electric vehicle because they needed to operate sound systems and other things. So this would eliminate their need to make this purchase by us reallocating equipment within.
That's right.
And it makes perfect sense what you're recommending to me. Thank you.
Councillor Brooks.
Just the question of purchase versus leasing, is that something we've ever done here, leased vehicles versus purchasing?
No, that would be a financing decision, but typically we've always purchased them and carried them for the life of the vehicles.
Okay.
That's been the history.
Councillor Smith.
When we talked about these during the budget, I was kind of looking forward to seeing like the cost over the life of the vehicle by different fuels. So I'm a little disappointed not to see what an electric vehicle, how it would score. But just nothing came forward, and therefore we can't consider electric vehicle in this procurement.
That's right. That we had staged the RFP, asking basically to offer all options, and we had the evaluation tool even giving a higher weighting to sustainability. If there is an option, they would have scored a lot higher. I think we gave a weighting for that particular piece, but we followed the procurement steps, and we just didn't get them. We didn't get any all gas vehicles were submitted.
Sorry, just to clarify our policy, like you can't then go out and say, we actually need, a proposal for an electric vehicle in order to balance out.
So you do have to be careful that you don't put yourself in a situation where you are, or it appears that you are bid shopping. So you're looking for proponents to sharpen their pencil by reissuing the same call. As a result of this process, we've decided at the director's table that future vehicle purchases, we're going to use a streamlined system that involves collaboration across departments. It does include the evaluation of life cycle costs of the truck. Those vary depending on the department and the usage, because of how much you use it affects the fuel and the type of usage, and then based on the different types of vehicles. But our process will include comprehensive evaluation, and we are hopeful that there will be supply available so that we can have different types, and then council can look at that. But we wouldn't recommend you go back out to market for this call. You got what you got.
Thank you very much for that.
Councillor Oikle.
Yes, I noticed that in the report that the vehicles won't be available until August or September. And so is staff willing to, you had suggested they temporarily utilize their own vehicles for traveling. So is staff willing and able to do that?
And that's, that is one option. And the other one during the summer months, typically there's people on vacations, and we've been able to work around some of that. And a third option will be looking at a short-term rental to get us through until the new ones arrive. So it's 3 different options that were not ideal, but they're very workable for us.
Other questions? I don't see any. Would someone put the motion on the floor, please? Deputy Mayor Vino.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council award RFP 2025-05-400 supply of 2 half-ton trucks to O'Regan's Chevrolet Buick GMC Cadillac Limited in the amount of $116,879.04, including HST, and I so move.
And seconded by Councillor Hubley. Is there further discussion? All those in favor signify with raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We will move on to a major 10.1, which is Policy and Strategy Committee recommendations, and the major event grant application for the Golden Shore Music Society.
This is a recommendation from the Policy and Strategy Committee. It meets your event grant, and the committee has recommended an award amount for council to consider.
Okay. Would someone put the motion on the floor? Councillor Oikle, thank you.
To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that Municipal Council accept the recommendation of the Policy and Strategy Committee and approve Golden Shores Music Society's application for funding through the major event grant in the amount of $1,500 for the Shipyard Shindig Music and Art Festival event taking place June the 14th, 2025, and I so move.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Burns. This is a recommendation coming forward. Is there any discussion? All those in favor raise their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. We will move on to staff reports, and under administration 11.1.1, which is first reading on the repeal and replacement of bylaw 013, capital cost recovery charges for water systems. Engineers are back. Mr. Richardson, Mr. Feener. Councillor Burns.
Thank you. I actually need to declare a conflict of interest on this, and my apologies. I should have done it at the beginning of the meeting, and I didn't, so my apologies.
You'll step away from the table. Okay. Mr. Richardson.
All right. I believe I'm a bit of a fill-in. I think this was April's report, but we'll be here for questions. And I believe Alex is going to be a bit of support for us. So, Policy and Strategy Committee in session on March 18th, 2025 discussed amendments to the capital cost recovery charges for water systems bylaw and directed staff to bring forward amendments for council's consideration. The attached proposed amendments reflect the changes discussed, and if council wishes to proceed, the following motion is required, and that is below.
Do you want to add anything?
I can just fill in that there's a number of housekeeping amendments, some plain language revisions, capitalizations, even one typo. Obviously, that was April doing that work, not me. Unfortunately, April is unwell this morning. The substantive changes you can see is the schedule is removed. So it's fully struck out, relieving no schedules attached to the bylaw at this time.
Would someone put the motion on the floor? Councillor Hubley, thank you.
Thank you to Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council. I move that municipal council accept the proposed amendments and conducts first reading by bylaw 013, capital cost recovery charges for water systems as presented, and give notice of its intention to conduct second reading at the June 10th, 2025 council meeting, and I so move.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Brooks, thank you. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. We will move on to 11.1.2, which is Proposed Private Road Standards Policy. This is a carryover item from previous council, and so for us who are new, this will be a bit of an education, I think.
Thank you, Mayor. This was last before council in October, and it is a project that has been ongoing for over a year, and it attempts to address the perceived problems with the private road standards that's currently included in our subdivision bylaw. The subdivision bylaw was created in 2018, and there was a lot of engagement on various aspects of it. It established private road standards, and since 2018, I believe there's been very limited number of private roads created, and there has been a lot of complaining by developers with respect to the standard that was created in the subdivision bylaw. We believe that as a result of developers' views with respect to the current private road standards as contained in the subdivision bylaw, it's led to the proliferation of phased development condominiums, because phased development condominiums are not subject to our subdivision bylaw, and there are no roads. Prior to the adoption of the cluster development regulations, there were no standards or regulations in place. So what this presentation does, and I'm not asking council to make any decisions, I'm interested in feedback to get a sense of where council feels this should go. And what I've done is gone through various aspects of the standard, and I've outlined what the current regulation would state under the subdivision bylaw, and whether there's any proposed change, and if there is a proposed change, then I include what that proposed change is. And at the end of the presentation, there's some key elements for discussion, because we're significantly proposing to change the way the process works. So under the current system, generally, the design of the private road has to be reviewed and approved by our municipal engineers. Now, they're reviewing and approving a road that we will never own, that we will never maintain. It's always going to be private, but the design is subject to the review and approval of our municipal engineers. The construction is left to the developer to develop as per the standard. What we're proposing in here is a shift so that the developer's design engineer must design as per our standard, and the developer's construction engineer must construct to the design, and we will rely upon two certificates from those engineers, one being a design certificate, the other being construction certificate. So we'll move through this. I know it's kind of long.
Can I ask a question to start with? Just a little bit of the history of the previous document that we're now changing, and what went into creating that. And now, subsequently, we're getting a document that's saying, perhaps this is one of the reasons we didn't have development, and people were trying to, like, how did we get to a little bit of the history of how that standard was established?
So prior to 2018, there was almost no standard. And so the pre-2018 private roads that you see in subdivisions weren't even necessarily built to the design that was in place, and in some instances, they weren't even located when the plant, where the plan indicated they would be. So there was no dedicated width, because they could build it as wide as they felt. There was no requirement other than that of the builder, and they didn't even require an engineer, although an engineer is required to design a road. But subdivisions were being developed and roads were being created by developers without necessarily having an engineer even look at the plan. The 2018 subdivision bylaw was introduced, and there was a lot of discussion about the standard. The council at the time wanted to elevate the standard from where it was, which was close to zero, but they didn't want to elevate it too high. And they were trying to find the sweet spot. And I believe it was Upland Consulting was the consultant that was engaged to do the work. And out of the discussion, there were lots of recommendations made. And then when it was converted into the bylaw, what appears to have happened is they took the old bylaw, and instead of rewriting it, they tried to insert private road provisions inside what was previously primarily a public roads document, so a municipal road document. And the bylaw itself puts a lot of the discretion on the municipal engineer. And the response, I wasn't here at the time of the subdivision approval, but it wasn't strongly endorsed by developers or surveyors. And since that time, developers and surveyors have continued to have issues with the standards included in the bylaw, which places our municipal engineers in a challenging spot, because under the bylaw, they're the ones that were required to approve the design. And you had developers that were constantly pushing back, trying to get the discretion out of the hands of the municipal engineer and back into their hands or the hands of their engineers. So this is an attempt to continue to require engineers to be involved. We're not putting the ability to do the work all the way back to the developers. We're continuing to require design engineer and construction engineer. And we did a jurisdictional scan and looked at how other municipalities were working with private roads. And again, these private roads are never going to be municipal roads. We're not going to be responsible for maintaining them, but we want to make sure they're sufficient, particularly for emergency vehicles, to get down and access, because that was one of the issues the 2018 subdivision bylaw review included. Because previous to that, some roads were created that couldn't hold a fire truck, right? And so there were issues with safety. There was an attempt to try to get the roads to a standard where GE trucks could get down for waste hauling, but we can't guarantee that because GE makes that call on their own based upon the road standard. But we could put in place something that would at least allow those trucks to travel on the road. So when we looked at the jurisdictional scan, one of the ones that stood out was East Hants. So they had a one-page document that set the standard for the private road. We didn't go that far. Ours is going to be slightly longer, but we followed a similar design, and we went out to the developers and the surveyors in the area, and we got their input. And and along with our engineering team, we looked at trying to break it down to the essence of what are the essential aspects of the road, outline what our minimum specifications would be. So we're going from being very prescriptive in the subdivision bylaw to being prescriptive, but only in those things that we deemed to be absolutely necessary to ensure that the road had the proper lot size, the proper right-of-way, the proper traveled portion, the proper amount of shouldering, and then left most of the remaining elements to the discretion of the design engineer, referencing back to two standard manuals that engineers rely upon. The subdivision bylaw currently has 14 manuals referenced. We're reducing it to 2. But the engineers themselves have a standard that they have to follow, so a professional standard of an engineer. And so what we look at here is how can we ensure that it's designed and built as per the design, and we come up with the certificates. So for the design, what's currently approved by our municipal engineer would be approved by the design engineer. And they would certify that they have designed to meet the specifications of the bylaw. And we would rely upon that certificate as proof that it is designed as per the bylaw. And for construction, now the construction engineer can be the same as the design engineer, but it still has to be a professional engineer, licensed to practice in Nova Scotia, carrying liability insurance. And they would certify that they've designed to the build. And we would rely upon that certificate as proof that they have designed. Because if there's negligence, or if there's a breach of that contract, we're not a party to it. That's the developer and the engineer. And so the liability should rest with that engineer as it relates to the contractual arrangement they have with the developer. We were getting into some instances under the previous bylaw where some of the designs that were coming in were so far below the standard that, practically speaking, our engineers were designing the road, because they were sending back so many, they were outlining so many deficiencies, errors, omissions, problems, and then putting it back to the engineer for the developer to correct and come up with a new design. And on occasions, we were seeing 12, 13 different proposals coming in from the developer's design engineer. And it wasn't a good use of anyone's time, and it created a lot of difficulties with the developer, because they continued to maintain, and it's caught in some of the discussions in the subdivision bylaw, that they wanted flexibility to adjust to on-site conditions, and they pushed that to the limit. So it was an attempt to correct the course of the private roads, because we do believe, and to some extent it's been confirmed by developers, that they have intentionally went with the phased development condominiums because they don't have to build a private road to our standard. In fact, there was no standard because they're exempt from subdivision bylaw. So this work has been going on for well over a year, and what I'm hoping to get from council today is a sense of whether you think this is on the right track or not. And if it's not on the right track, just by the nature of the discussion, I'd like to get a sense of where you'd like to see us go. So the current, so this is current and proposed. The current is all private road designs are subject to the approval of the municipal engineer. The proposal is that all private roads will be designed by the developer's design engineer, and the design engineer will stamp and seal the design confirming that the private road was designed to the requirements of the policy. So rather than us getting all of the plans and all of the reports and all the technical information, we will get a document from the design engineer confirming that it's been designed to the policy. Next one. The construction. So the construction of PDRs, or private design roads, shall be inspected and certified by a qualified professional engineer licensed to practice in Nova Scotia and hired by the subdivider at their expense. So under the current system, the municipal engineer approves the design but is not involved in the construction. That is left back to the professional engineer hired by the developer. The proposal is PDRs will be constructed as designed under the supervision of a professional engineer licensed to practice in the province of Nova Scotia and holding valid errors and emissions insurance. So there's the change is some of the wording, but it is still the professional engineer hired by the subdivider that will oversee and certify the construction. And we've included the requirement to have liability insurance because oddly, engineers are not required to carry errors and omissions insurance like lawyers are. I don't know if that's because they're less likely to be sued, but it seems risky. The next one is current requirement is requirements in excess of the minimum standards may be required subject to the discretion of the municipal engineer. This was one of the items that the developers complained about fairly regularly, was the level of discretion that was moved to the municipal engineer in our current subdivision bylaw. So the proposed is municipal engineer is no longer involved in the review or approval of the design of private roads, i.e. the municipal engineer no longer has the discretion to require any standards. So again, it's still an engineer that's required to do this, but it is not the municipal engineer. It's the engineer hired by the developer. Next one. I've added this since the cluster development came in. So as you'll recall, the cluster development is triggered by development that has 6 or more units in 2 or more dwellings on a single lot. So one of the things that came up with developers is this request that they have the ability to design but not construct immediately, so that they have some ability to raise revenue by selling and building on the first few lots of the road as a means of putting some money in their pocket to help defray the cost of the construction of the road. And so the threshold that was set for cluster developments, so if you have a development with 5 or more units in 2 or more buildings, you're not triggering the development agreement under the cluster development regulations, so you're not subject to the requirements for road networking that's found in the cluster development regulations. So I included a similar clause here to give the same type of threshold to people that are doing subdivisions to make their consistency with cluster development. So the proposal is private roads will be required for a subdivision which will include 6 or more lots, provided that developer can create 5 lots before the private road is required to be constructed. So that is acknowledging for the developer that they can get some lots created and some lots sold before they actually have to construct the private lot. And it's be triggered on the 6 units, 6 parcels, which is consistent with the cluster development bylaw.
Councillor, sorry, Councillor Wickel.
Yeah, just on that previous slide. So when you say that they can, they have sold their 5 lots, does this mean that people will be living in homes on a road that isn't really a very good road? Or will they have just sold those lots and have not built anything yet?
No, so in the same way that you could develop a lot and put 5 units on it and only have a driveway and not have to meet any requirement because the cluster development bylaw wouldn't kick in until 6, the same type of approach here. They are going to be able to sell 5 lots on the road, but it won't have to be constructed to the design standard of a private road. It'll just basically be a driveway. But because the developer, if they plan on 6 or more parcels to be created, they know that they have to upgrade that part of the road before they can go to number 6. So it's intended to be a temporary measure that allows them to get a few lots sold to generate some money to help them cover the cost of future road development. Okay. So the technical references in our current subdivision bylaw, there's 12 of them. We're proposing that there would be 2, the geometric design for Canadian roads, which is a Transportation Association of Canada, and the municipal services specifications. So those 2. But we also rely upon the professionalism of engineers to meet the standards required of them. That's not to say that they can't rely upon other documents, but as for the purpose of our subdivision bylaw, we only reference 2. Next one. So the road classifications. Currently, the private design roads are classified as rural laneway that has no more than 18 lots, and low-volume rural roads, which has more than 18. We're proposing to reduce it to a single classification of private design roads. So we're not going to make changes depending upon the number of lots. We're going to set the standard. If the developer wants to go above that standard, it's up to, they're obviously entitled to do that. But we're not going to break it down in the way it was currently provided in this inland subdivision bylaw.
Where did the 18 come from?
That came from the subdivision review. I don't know if there's necessarily any science behind it, but that was the threshold trigger to change from one road to the next. Yep. So these are the alignment controls. So the first you see is the rural laneway. The first two are the classifications that currently exist, and the third is a private design road. So you'll see the posted speed limits remain the same, the design speed remains the same, the maximum gradient remains the same. We've kept the LVR horizontal curve radius at 60, the same with the site distance 45, the same with the vertical sag curve K at 7, and the vertical crest curve K at 4. And Jamie's here if you have a question about what a sag curve K is. Because I have some understanding of it, but I can't explain it well.
I would like to know.
I believe it's a horoscope.
You'll need to come to the mic. Yeah.
It makes more sense when he draws it, honestly.
The K values are just a number determined mathematically that represents the amount of vertical curve in a road, so a hill or a valley. So the crest is the valley, and you're looking for numbers. These numbers are determined because you're worried about where your headlights will shine, whether you drive too fast for how much your headlights will shine. That's what this is based on, and it's also based on being able to see other vehicles and pedestrians.
Anything else anyone wants to know about that? It's always good to learn something new the first thing in the morning. Councillor Oikel.
Are these normal, typical alignment controls that are across the board?
The LVR is right out of the TAC manual. The LVR K values that are there is right out of the TAC manual for an LVR road. So they are very typical, yes.
Councillor Smith? No? Okay.
I'll stay here for.
You should say that.
There's more technical.
Yep. And so, so as shown here on this table, we have the LVR, which is more than 18 lots, is the standard that we use for alignment controls for the PDR. We've used all of the same, and as Jamie's indicated, some of that is right out of the TAC manual. Next. So intersection with existing roads, horizontal approach. So the currently our subdivision bylaw says roadway intersections with existing municipal roadways shall have an intersection angles at no less than 70 degrees and no greater than 110 to the existing municipal roadway. That would also apply to public roads. We're not proposing any change to that. Next one. The vertical approach, roadway gradient adjustments for intersections with existing municipal roadways shall be designed in accordance with the geometric design guide for Canadian roads, and we're not proposing any change to that. Next. Horizontal and vertical approaches intersecting with existing roads, so roadway intersections with existing provincial roadways shall be subject to the approval of the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works. That is a requirement that they have, and we haven't changed that. Next. Intersection with new roads, new intersections shall be designed in accordance with the geometric design guide for Canadian roads, so we're not proposing any change to that. Cul-de-sacs, currently turning Ts or cul-de-sacs shall be placed at the end of all dead-end streets on PDRs, and we're not suggesting any change to that. Now the road reserve, this has a bit of a rationale for this change. So currently, the subdivision bylaw requires that all subdivisions shall provide for a road reserve allowance for future extension of the public road to the boundaries of an adjacent lot or watercourse at minimum intervals of 400 meters as determined to be feasible at the sole discretion of the municipal engineer. In theory, this is a good idea. It provides road reserves, so parcels of land that go out to either the lake or the adjacent lot. The challenge is we can't require one developer to allow the traffic from another development to travel over their private road. So we can set up a system to allow for the road reserves so that they could connect, but we don't require the roadway to actually be built so they're connected, and we can't require them to allow others to travel on those roads when they do connect, because the private road right-of-ways are limited to property owners on the private road. And in some instances, the road association takes title to the parcel that the private road is on and then collects maintenance fees for that, which we do not contribute to. And by the way, even if we own property on that private road, we don't contribute to the road maintenance. So we're suggesting that this clause be removed. It is permitted under the MGA, so it is allowed to be in the subdivision bylaw. But the intention for this is to just clear up something that we require that looks good on paper, but currently we have very little ability to manage it. The other part is, when it goes to the water, the road reserve looks like there's something that can access the water to, but again, the public can't access the water that way because it's off a private road. So it created a level of confusion. And even those situations where the municipality owns land on a private road that is on a lake, we're challenged to make the public, that access available to the public because it's a private road. And so when the public that live on that private road see increased traffic of non-residents to access the lake on our land, they complain because it's increased use of the road that they pay to maintain for people that access the lake without paying to maintain that road. And we have a couple of examples of that where we regularly get complaints from residents and property owners when that takes place.
Sorry, can you say which examples those are?
I'd have to look to Trudy for that we own the two pieces of property on the lake. Hallmore Lane, yes.
Councillor Hubley?
I can just add a comment to that. I live on Rhino Lake, and we have a private lane, and there is a ton of road traffic to access the lake, and we pay to maintain the road. So I can relate to that clause.
So we're proposing that it gets removed. Not expecting to have a large discussion about this today, but if we bring it back for first reading, have a more definitive discussion about how council feels about that particular clause. It's not uncommon to see it in subdivisions as it relates to private roads, but practically it creates heightened expectation to the public, which might not be in our best interest to put forward. So road and driveway layout. Currently, it says residential driveway access design shall conform to the recommendations contained in the Guidelines for Residential Subdivision Street Design or the Geometric Design Guide for Canadian Roads, where the road traffic will consist of a mix of residential, commercial, and/or industrial traffic volumes. The municipal engineer may, at their sole discretion, specify other driveway requirements. We're proposing to remove the reference to the Guidelines for Residential Subdivision Street Design and place discretion to specify other driveway requirements to the design engineer. So still with the geometric design for Canadian roads, but switch the discretion back to the design engineer.
Councillor Oikle.
And what about removing, and do we still want that it's up to the municipal engineer at their sole discretion? Are we keeping that?
No, we're placing the discretion to specify other design requirements to the design engineer.
Okay.
Cross-section control, so minimum right-of-way. So the current minimum right-of-way width is 20 meters for all private design roads, except under exceptional circumstances, subject to discretion of the municipal engineer in accordance with accepted engineering practice, and under no circumstances shall the right-of-way width be less than 15.2 meters. So the proposal is the minimum right-of-way width for a private design road shall be 15.2 meters, assuming maximum drainage ditch back slopes can be accommodated. Where the maximum drainage ditch back slopes cannot be accommodated within the 15.2 meters, the right-of-way shall be determined by the design engineer at their sole discretion. So where the first had a minimum at 15.2, we've just kept the minimum at 15.2. So that's the width of the parcel that the traveled roadway sits on. It's not the width of the road itself. So that's 15.2 meters. The road itself is not that wide. This is just the width of the lot. Yes.
Councillor Moore.
So 15.2 meters, are we comfortable with the fact of emergency vehicles traveling?
Yeah, because they travel on the roadway, and this is the width of the property the road has to sit on.
Oh, okay, I see, yeah, perfect, thank you.
And we're setting the minimum, not the maximum. So the lot that the road sits on can't be, it's the minimum width of 15.2. And that's assuming you can get the what do they call it? The drainage ditch back slopes.
Which is?
The back side of the drain. Or, that's my non-engineering view. Well,
Mr. Burgess, would you like to clarify that?
Typically on a municipally owned road, the entire 20 meters is used for a ditch on one side, the road, and a ditch on the other side. Backside of that ditch to backside of that ditch is 20 meters. So on these roads, backside of ditch to backside of ditch will now be 15.2 meters.
And is the back side of the ditch would be the side of the slope of the ditch that is not on the road side?
Yeah.
The other side?
Okay, so the farthest, at the same elevation of the road, so if you took a straight line and drew it across the road and drew it across the ditch, where you hit the back side of the ditch is the back side of the ditch.
So what this is suggesting is 15.2 meters, assuming the maximum drainage back slopes can be accommodated at 15.2. And if they can't, then it's at the discretion of the design engineer to make it a little wider, but they might not have to go to 20 meters. Okay, next one. So the cross-section minimum road surface width. So the rural laneway, so that's under 18 lots, is 5.5 meters, and the low-volume road is 6.6. And we're proposing for the private design road 6.1 with 5.5 compacted surface and 0.3 meters on each side for rounded shoulders. So the compacted surface would be the 5.5 and then 0.3 meters on each side for rounded shoulders.
And what's that What's that based on? Like, the
so
proposed change?
the 5.5, I'll let Jamie explain it. I have an idea, but
The 5.5 is the rural laneway width. And at the edge of that, where the road turns into ditch, you need some width there because it's not structurally stable. So you need something there that cars don't drive on. And that's what that basically 1 foot of ditches, of, I'll call it shoulder, but it's not a shoulder. It's not big enough to be a shoulder. It's just where the road rounds off.
My question is really around, how do we come up with that number?
So the 6.1, I don't know. I did not come up with that number. The 5.5
So
is the rural laneway.
It's the rural laneway plus the
And the
0.3.
6.6 is the low-volume road. And those are numbers basically out of the TAC manual.
Okay.
But, yeah,
It's the Bible of engineering roads. It's the Bible
Pretty
of
much.
engineering roads?
the TAC manual really is, yes.
So these cross-sections for guardrails, the current requirement is a guardrail shall be placed where the drop from the road surface is greater than 3 meters and the slope is less than 6:1, horizontal to vertical. And the proposal is that the design engineer, at their sole discretion, shall determine whether guardrails are required. Next one. So these are a series of cross-sectional set controls. So rock slopes, back slopes in rock are a maximum of 1 to 4 for all road classes. We're proposing the design engineer at their sole discretion shall determine whether rock slopes are required. Next. Retaining walls. Currently it says, other than undisturbed or otherwise stable naturally occurring rock faces, all exposed vehicle cuts of soil in the road right-of-way shall be stabilized and prevented from failure by retaining walls sufficient height and strength where a cut slope conforming to the requirements of Schedule J is uneconomic. The design and construction inspection of retaining walls will be prepared by and directed through a professional engineer licensed in the province of Nova Scotia and competent in the field of geotechnical engineering. The design will be subject to the review and approval of the municipal engineer at their sole discretion. The proposal is that the design engineer at their sole discretion shall determine whether retaining walls are required. Next one. Roadway surface. So generally, the roadway surface is to be crowned in the center with a 3% slope towards each drainage ditch for gravel surfaced roads. Exceptions can occur where super elevations are required to accommodate turning radii or intersection alignment, or where hydraulic analysis indicates a greater crown slope is required. The proposal is the roadway surface is to be crowned in the center with a 3% slope towards each drainage ditch, provided that the design engineer at their sole discretion may determine that a greater crown slope is required. So that's to move water off the road into the ditches. And if the design engineer thinks 3% won't do it, they can pick a higher number to make it work. The PDR. So this is one that's it's included in the subdivision bylaw. This was arrived at in the discussion when 2018, when the subdivision bylaw was put in place to give options to developers, because one of the things they wanted to be able to do was to take account. They wanted something they could take off the shelf, or they wanted something that they could take to consider the local conditions. And so this is what was arrived at. So, designed by a professional engineer licensed to practice in Nova Scotia, based on site-specific conditions and using the AASHTO Guide for Design of Pavement Structures or similar methods as approved by the municipal engineer. The specified design shall be sufficient to accommodate a Category 1 motor vehicle with an axle weight of 18,000 kilograms and a spread range of 2.4 to 3 meters. Now, private roads aren't paved. So that design for paved structures or similar method approved by the municipal engineer, it ties back to the site-specific conditions. That's what the developers in 2018 wanted the option for. 2 is the off-the-shelf a base course with a minimum thickness of 200 millimeters and a surface course with a minimum thickness of 100 meters. And then 3 was a base course and surface course with thickness as specified in the following table in accordance with the subgrade type present on site as determined by a professional engineer licensed to practice in Nova Scotia. Granular till shall be defined as material less than 35% passing a 75 I have no idea what that. Micrometer, sieve. While silt and clay shall include those materials with more than 35% passing a 75 micro, any sieve. So this is, you gotta shake dirt through it, something. Can you explain what that is?
I don't understand that.
That's not good.
Put your mic on. We didn't hear you say that.
Sorry,
Got it on the record.
I don't understand that specification at all.
But the sieve is, you take the material on site and you put it through something and determine the size? Is that what it's talking about?
Sieve analysis is to do that, yes. And what they are talking about there is what that's very small particles. That's very, very small particles. So there's granularity defined as it being less than, material with less than 35%. Yes, okay, so they're saying, yeah, because if you have more than that 35%, it will be a silt clay. So that's what they're saying. But I don't know why that is in, when we're talking about a base course. I don't know what that determines. Is there another paragraph or another sentence to that?
Nope.
No,
Yeah, no, there isn't. So those are what's currently there. What we're proposing is the base course and surface course of a private design road shall be designed by a professional engineer licensed to practice in Nova Scotia based on site-specific conditions as determined by the design engineer at their sole discretion, provided that the specified design shall be sufficient to accommodate a Category 1 motor vehicle with an axle weight of 18,000 kilograms. So again, simplifying it, moving the discretion to the design engineer, still having that Category 1 motor vehicle, which references back to option 1, which provides for large-scale vehicles. Next one. My gosh, how many more do I got? PDR, base course and surface course erosion control and prevention. So currently, minimum erosion control and prevention measures shall be as per the standard specifications for municipal services and the Erosion and Control Handbook for Construction Sites, latest edition, or as per an approved design drawing submitted as part of the design and sealed by a professional engineer licensed to practice in Nova Scotia. So the proposal is minimum erosion control and prevention measures shall be as per the standard specifications for municipal services or as designed by the municipal engineer, or by the design engineer. So reducing that quite a bit. Next one. Stormwater drainage. All land serviced by the proposed roadway system shall be serviced by a drainage system. This shall consist of such open ditches and closed conduits as are required to collect and remove stormwater from at least a 1 in 10 year storm event for rural laneway, and LVR should be class roads. The municipal engineer may specify a greater return period storm event where infrastructure and/or property are at a greater risk of damage due to flooding or due to the critical service nature of the affected infrastructure and/or property. The proposed is all land serviced by the proposed private road system shall be serviced by a drainage system. The drainage system shall consist of open ditches and closed conduits as required to collect and remove stormwater from at least a 1 in 10 year storm event.
Can I just ask about this 1 in 10 year storm event and whether that's changing at all with climate change?
Whether the design standards have changed?
Well, I just mean can you explain what 1 in 10, what that looks like, 1 in 10 year storm event? And if we're having, more frequent extreme weather events, if that's adequate or if it's changing as far as you know.
It's statistics. And a 1 in 10 year storm in our minds is once every 10 years we get a storm of this magnitude. But it's statistics, and it's like gambling. You might get 3 1 in 10 year storms this year. And in fact, we get, 2 years ago, we had 1 in 100-year storms, or we hit a storm that exceeded the 1 in 100-year storm. And we are typically, I took a stormwater course recently, and the answer is no. Statistically speaking, no, we are not seeing any difference with global warming. But anecdotally, yes. But statistically, in calculations, we are still designing to these storm criteria that we have always designed to. And 1 in 10 years is what we design stormwater for a rural road without municipal services in it. So this is the right number at this point, or it is the...
It's the industry standard.
Industry standard, yes.
The next one. Stormwater disposal. So currently, no stormwater drainage system shall be acceptable to the municipal engineer where, in their sole opinion, the disposal location of collected stormwater negatively impacts the receiving environment or can create property damage. That's current. The proposal is the design engineer shall ensure that stormwater drainage system does not negatively impact the receiving environment or create property damage. So we kept the requirement, put it the discretion to the design engineer, and very similar language in both instances. So the private road standards policy purpose. So the private road standards policy is intended to balance emergency vehicle access and road quality with the cost of the construction of the private roads. That was the purpose in 2018 when they put the standard in, and it's still the same purpose today, but it's adjusted in a way that we think better balances those two things. So emergency vehicle access and road quality with the cost of construction, and the cost of construction is going to be determined primarily by the design engineer acting in their capacity as a professional, as it referencing back to the TAC manual and the geometric that is the TAC manual, and the other document is municipal services, municipal standards. So not changing the purpose, but we think better achieving the purpose. Next one. So some of the key elements, just to go through them quickly. The private design road will be designed by a professional engineer licensed to practice in Nova Scotia and holding valid errors and emissions insurance, the design engineer. The developer will provide the development officer with a certificate in the form provided by the municipality, stamped and signed by the design engineer, confirming that the private design road has been designed in accordance with the private roads standards policy, and we call that the design certificate. The private design roads will be constructed as designed under the supervision of a professional engineer licensed to practice in the province of Nova Scotia and holding a valid errors and emissions insurance. We call that the construction engineer. Next one. The developer will provide the development officer with certificate in the form provided by the municipality, stamped and signed by the construction engineer, confirming that the private design road has been constructed in accordance with the design certificate, the construction certificate. The developer is responsible for retaining the services of the design engineer and the construction engineer, and for the purpose of this policy, the design engineer and the construction engineer may be the same person or firm, and the municipality will rely upon the design certificate as stamped and signed by the design engineer as evidence of the fact that the private design road has been designed in accordance with this policy. And the municipality will rely upon the construction certificate as stamped and signed by the construction engineer as evidence of the fact that the private design road has been constructed in accordance with the design certificate. And the developer is responsible for ensuring that all applicable permits from the province are in place and that all applicable provincial standards are adhered to with respect to the design of the and construction of the private road. Is that it? Thank God.
Thank you, Tom. In summary, we are changing this to assign the responsibility to design and construction engineers of the developer as opposed to the engineers in-house.
Yes.
That's the summary.
That's the summary. It took me 35 minutes to get there.
You're a lawyer and I'm not. Councillor Brooks.
Do we think we'll actually see any cost savings with this potentially, that we won't have our staff dedicated to that?
Less involvement of staff, and in discussions with some developers who have actually done an analysis of what they say, our current cost based on current standard and potential cost on this one, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars per road for the developer.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Hubley.
Thanks, Tom. I think this is long overdue. But I do have one question. Do we ever, the municipality, physically inspect these roads? Or is that off the table completely?
Other than if we were asked to go out and look, we wouldn't.
It's not going to be necessary?
No.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, and we don't put municipal infrastructure on private roads either, so there wouldn't be anything of ours to look at.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just to clarify, you say hundreds of thousands of dollars for developers could be saved, so this could be a factor in increasing affordable housing. Could it?
Well,
I'm saying very hopefully.
On the theory that the developer pushes down all their costs to the properties, the value of the property, and what they build on those properties, it certainly could. It's hard to compare because there's not a lot of private roads being built under the current standard. There's a few, but it seems that they have gone to the phase development condominium, which has a large upfront cost, a lot of legal work at the beginning, and a whole different structure to organize and maintain. So our hope is that the new private road standard will eliminate or reduce the attractiveness of the phase development condominium, and encourage developers to start actually doing development and subdividing, because I've heard a number of developers say that they're not going to do private roads under the current standard. It's just too expensive. So our hope is that taking them at their word, that we'll see increased development, more housing, which should have the impact of providing more housing, and that means some of the other housing can be less expensive.
Councillor Oikel.
And what is our timeline for this to be implemented?
So I'm encouraged by the discussion today. We would plan to take it to council in June for first reading. Now, the way we're going to adopt it, because we're intentionally trying to avoid opening up the subdivision bylaw at this time. So we're going to create it as an alternative policy, which would allow developers, that haven't quite figured out the language yet, but it would be an alternative to allow developers to opt into this new standard, and the policy would relate back to the subdivision bylaw. So you still have to follow the subdivision bylaw for all elements of the subdivision, but you could move to this new standard instead of following the current standard once the policy is adopted. So we have to figure the mechanics of that out, but that's how we operate.
Councillor Oikel and then Councillor Reinhardt.
So at first reading, then this would be in place for anyone who wanted to do something, or would it have to wait until after the second reading?
I'm gonna ask, it's a policy. So Jeff, maybe you can explain a little bit from that perspective?
The Municipal Government Act allows council to adopt engineering specifications by policy. So there's a bylaw, that's where you have first reading and second reading. So in this case, council needs to give 7 days notice to itself that you're going to amend the policy. Now you may want to look at, before you just go and do it, that you look at some type of engagement before adopting that policy.
Councillor Reinhardt.
Yeah, this is more informational. So most of this is about the construction of the road. Is there any oversight for maintenance of the road, like once it's constructed? Okay.
No.
I'm just thinking of some of the winter conditions we had and some of the trouble emergency vehicles had on some of the roads. So is there any provision to make sure that private roads are, sanded, ready for
No, we don't control the maintenance, but we do provide road associations with the ability to have the municipality collect the fees for road maintenance and then distribute it back to the road association so they can ensure things like snow removal and maintenance, sanding and those types of things. So we offer that as a means so that the association itself isn't trying to collect from its members when sometimes that isn't easy, or some certain residents may not want to pay or feel that they have to pay. And when the municipality collects, we collect it from everyone as part of the taxes.
Other questions? Councillor Burns and then Councillor Smith.
Tom, can you just go back to explaining the interaction between the 5 lots and not needing to construct the road until you get to the 6th lot? Does that change? Because right now, correct me if I'm wrong, but once you get above 2 subdivisions, then you need the approval, and for that approval, you need to start to interact with the private road. So will this change that you can, by right, do an initial number of subdivisions? So like if someone was, say, had 10 acres and they were only doing 4 subdivisions, is this going to change that at all? Or is it just road standards and you have to put that private road in either way?
So the subdivision bylaw itself,
yes,
it doesn't change. This only impacts the use of the private roads, and it clarifies that the design of the private, you have to design the whole road.
Yes.
But you're not going to trigger construction until you get to lot 6.
Right. Okay, thank you.
And it's intended as a planned subdivision, so
Okay.
multiple lots.
Thank you.
Councillor Smith.
How does this place us, you said you did a jurisdictional scan, so how does this place us with regards to neighboring municipalities? Do they have similar standards for private roads and
Yep,
development?
so a lot of, as Jamie's indicated and as referenced in this, a lot of it is based on the TAC manual and municipal specifications. Where we see our bylaw puts very clearly all of the discretion in the design engineer. Some municipalities continue to be involved in the design, but the private roads themselves, like for East Hanson, those things, would look similar. The standard is similar. And then some municipalities have much older private roads where there's, you go back to like the Woods Road or the old Lake Road, not having brought it up to standards. So it places us where we need to be to encourage developers to start developing subdivisions in our municipalities and serviced by private roads.
Other questions? Well, we need to take a break.
Yes. That's a lot.
That's a lot, but I would say I think this is an important move, because I think as a municipal government we should be doing things to encourage development and get out of the way in a reasonable fashion from micromanaging how developers actually create development in our community. And so I think this is a progressive step, and I would say we should move on as quickly as we can to get this in place.
Thank you.
And I think we'll have a 10-minute break. Thank you.
What's that? Oh, what?
He told me Landis.
We'll resume our meeting and move on the agenda to the proposed terms of reference for our Regional Growth Management Committee, which Tom will again lead us in this.
Thank you, Mayor. So as council will recall, at the meeting on February 11th, 2025, the motion was passed that Municipal Council approve the establishment of a joint Regional Growth Management Committee in partnership with the Town of Bridgewater and direct staff to work with the Town of Bridgewater staff to prepare draft terms of reference for the committee and present the draft terms of reference for council for final approval at a future council meeting. So this is that meeting where the draft terms of reference of the Regional Growth Management Committee, so we've dropped the joint, so the RGMC. It's been reviewed by the Town of Bridgewater Council, and they passed a motion to approve it. The key components of the terms of reference are, 1, the committee mandate is to advise and recommend to council options to collaborate on responding to opportunities and challenges created by regional growth, including alignment of growth and infrastructure, so roads, active transportation, public transportation, sewer, water, and land use planning. And I would note on roads, what we're more talking there is the road network, including infrastructure like sidewalks, crosswalks, and lights. By way of example, if the development in Hebbville were to go ahead and add up to 2,000 people just outside the town, we would have to look at how that impacts the road network of the town. It might trigger the requirement for lights, crosswalks, sidewalks, other infrastructure upgrades. And this committee would be the place where that discussion takes place. But the committee itself can't make any decisions or commit the municipality to doing anything. But it provides what we lack right now, which is an opportunity and a space for those discussions to take place at a high level. It also looks at service delivery and issues that cross municipal boundaries, such as regional economic growth and investment, or opportunities to collaborate to increase capacity and service levels. The committee is advisory and takes direction from the councils. The committee works on those matters that have been referred to it from both councils. So the committee is a place to have discussions that are initiated at the council table, not at the committee table. And so that's important, that the committee has no real mandate of its own. It only talks about and discusses things that are sent to it by the partner councils. The composition of the committee will be the mayor, the deputy mayor, and an alternate from each municipal unit. The meetings are open to the public except for in camera. The meetings shall be publicly advertised 7 days in advance. Meeting notes and consensus will be maintained as opposed to minutes and motions. The terms of reference were approved by the Town of Bridgewater Council on May 12th. And the terms of reference are included in your package, which just further expand on those key responsibilities. So we're asking that council pass a motion to approve the Regional Growth Management Committee terms of reference.
Councillor Oikle.
Yeah, so basically, just so I understand, an alternate is a person who has no say right presently on committees, from my understanding, is if I were an alternate on a committee, I don't vote and I have no say. So this committee right now, what you're proposing, has only 4 people on it, the mayor and the deputy mayor from each municipality. And the alternate has no say. And I'm wondering, what is the alternate's job if it's just going to be a discussion between the 2 mayors and the 2 deputy mayors? Like, I'm just thinking that maybe the alternate shouldn't be an alternate. They should be a counselor rather than just an alternate.
So some committees are more formal than others. So there are committees where alternates can attend, can have input at the discretion of the chair, but cannot vote. And their presence there is to maintain the level of knowledge of what's happening at the committee. So this committee would manage its own procedure informally through discussion of the members. So it could be that the mayors and deputy mayors agree that the alternate can be included in discussion, but not vote. But this isn't intended to be a committee that votes. It's by consensus. And so we're trying not to put too many constraints on how it operates. We would leave that to the committee to maintain, it's how it wants to operate.
All right, and can it be reviewed in the future if they feel that having a counselor as a permanent member of the committee rather than just as an alternate, can it be, are
So
these things able to be changed?
the terms of reference can be reviewed as initiated by a council. We didn't build into the terms of reference an automatic review. We tried to keep it relatively short. But certainly, depending on how the committee operates, there may be reason to change the terms of reference after some time has gone by. It is supported by staff, so the CAOs will support it, and we'll bring in the staff required at whatever, depending upon the discussion and the situations that are being dealt with by the committee.
Thank you. I'm really excited that this is happening. I just wanted to make sure that there would be enough voices, but not too many voices.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you. I see this as an advisory committee to foster goodwill and good working relations between neighbors. And I think that that's what it's trying to accomplish. And I think the way it's being proposed to be set up is quite good.
Any other comments? I think we recognize as a council that there are a lot of issues that Tom has outlined in the proposal here that are of joint interest to our neighboring municipality in the town of Bridgewater, and a lot of overlap in what we're trying to accomplish. And this creates a forum to deal with those issues, some of which are complicated, complex issues we know around water, particularly around water, but that need immediate attention, but also other issues that will continue to develop as we grow, and the growth is around the periphery of the town. And so trying to align ourselves and how we deal with those issues is going to become more and more important. And I think we all agree that working together with our neighboring municipalities is to all our benefit. And so I think this is a really important step in fostering that. And so I think just to try things and see how we get along is the first step. And then if we need to refine it, we can do that. But I think the important point is that nothing will get to that committee unless it's agreed to here, so that no one is feeling we're doing things kind of on the side, that we are collectively agreeing to what we should do. And I think that's important. And Councillor Moore.
I see you'll be appointing a chair and a vice chair. Will there be notes taken that are open to that councillors can review after your meetings?
Yes, so the terms of reference, it's not minutes, it's notes.
Yep.
And any consensus that's reached would be included in
and
the notes.
those be made available to us after each meeting. Okay, thank you.
And the meetings are public, so
Yeah. Oh, good, yeah.
there's a high degree of transparency here.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Councillor Smith.
Yeah, just around the transparency, it says around meeting procedure, the RGMC shall publicly advertise its meetings on each municipal unit's webpage at least 7 days prior to the meeting. I can imagine we're also going to hear about it as councillors, when the meetings are, where they are. I just like things landing on the webpage. It's hard, sometimes it's hard to discover those things. So I hope that there'll be other efforts to, share when these meetings are taking place, because
Go on our calendars, yeah.
yeah, it would be really nice to even have calendar invites so that we know when it's happening.
Any other questions? Could we have someone propose the motion? Councillor Huber.
Thank you. To Mayor McLean-Weil and members of council, I move that municipal council approve the terms of reference for the Regional Growth Management Committee as presented. And I so move.
And a seconder, seconded by Councillor Oikel. Although, any further discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hands. Motion is carried unanimously.
Yeah.
Move on to the Finance Department and Property Tax Exemption Application, and Ms. Wenzel will lead us with the LaHave Coastal Conservation Association exemptions.
Thank you, Mayor McLean-Weil, and good morning, everyone. So, as you'll recall, Council did approve a list of property tax exemptions per your policy number 12. And that was a 3-year list that you approved just a little while ago, based on the policy deadline, which was February 28th. So the LaHave Coastal Conservation Association did make application for several properties at that time, and those exemptions were granted. However, there's 11 more properties that they didn't own at that time that they subsequently purchased for conservation purposes. So we, staff asked them to bring in a late application to council to see if you were interested in allowing a tax exemption for these additional 11 properties. The total cost of that for this fiscal year is $167.83. It's not in our budget. However, we believe it probably could be absorbed in that group budget that we do have for all the exemptions, because we do budget conservatively there. So, as you know, LaHave Coastal Conservation Association's mandate is to protect habitats, restore and conserve ecosystems, and provide educational programs on best practices for environmental stewardship, habitat restoration, and biodiversity planning, which does align with your local climate change action plan and helps bring us closer to the conservation goal of 20% of land and water mass in our municipality by 2030. This is a policy that council does have to approve, like these tax exemptions are in the MGA. So there's an alternative. Council could say no, and we would ask that organization to pay these taxes and then make application for next fiscal year. So based on the fact that council has already approved previous conservation properties for this organization as tax exemptions, and we also included a map for your information of where these properties are located, that staff are recommending that you do approve these ones as well.
Any questions on this? Someone like to propose the motion? Councillor Bell.
Thank you to Mayor McLean-Weil and members of MODL Council. I move that Municipal Council approve the tax exemption application from LaHave Coastal Conservation Association for the 11 properties as presented. I so move.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Seconded by Councillor Hubley. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by raising their hands. Motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. We will move on to Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Councillor matters, and an update from the LCLC. Deputy Mayor Vino.
I'm just pulling up my report. Just 1 second. Okay, so we had an LCLC meeting on May 22nd of last week, and the following is an update from that meeting. We did pass one motion in relation to the financial estimates, and that motion read that the preliminary financial estimates as of March 31st, 2025 be accepted for information purposes, with the understanding that the final results will be included in the audited financial statements to be presented prior to the September board meeting. Some general updates from our interim GM. The new tables and chairs for the Galleria have been ordered, along with new chairs for the meeting room. The loss of phase protection, the installation for this project requires a complete Nova Scotia Power disconnect. This work has been scheduled for May 30th. Communication will be sent out to tenants, user groups, and the public, as this requires the whole facility to be shut down during this day. LCLC is actively hiring a number of key seasonal positions in preparation for the summer months. Recruitment is underway for day camp staff, as well as lifeguards for both the outdoor pool and Mush Mush Lake in our district. In addition, they'll soon be advertising for a full-time permanent facility operator. Something new that got brought up at our last meeting, which I was personally interested to see, and I think those around the table as well, we asked for a membership breakdown by region to get an idea of where numbers are coming from our membership. And the municipality of District of Lunenburg made up 49.7% of memberships, Town of Bridgewater 30.6%, District of Chester 7.1%, Queens 6.5%, Town of Lunenburg and Mahone Bay at 1.6%. And I won't list all the rest, but it also touched base in having people as far away as Yarmouth, Shelburne, HRM. So this is just membership, not users that come to the facility for like a one-time use. But it's good to see those numbers because it's something I don't think that has been brought forward to this council or the previous one. With regards to programming, they're continuing to expand and enhance offerings across both active living and aquatics. 5 new fitness classes have been added, and it also provides opportunities for the community to sign up for new times. Currently, they are midway through the spring session of swimming lessons. Recent instructor in-services have helped ensure consistency and quality across all swimming lessons. They've recently certified 7 new instructors, 5 of whom were all teaching at the LCLC. Strong ongoing interest in aquatic leadership development. And as a side note from that, and another role that I play, it's really good to see the youth getting back involved in aquatics and applying for those positions. Past events that have taken place, the South Shore Expo, seen 4,812 people visit the facility over that weekend. Logan Mania, which is a wrestling event, brought in 500 attendees. And recently, the National Para Hockey Tournament, over the 4 days, brought 6,848 people through the doors of the facility. The LCLC received positive feedback from both participants and event organizers for the National Para Hockey, and the LCLC continues to be the ideal host venue for para hockey events in Nova Scotia, with one of the most accessible facilities for these users. Upcoming events, the Canada Circus Spectacular is bringing 2 shows in June 16th. The South Shore Regional Center for Education is holding their Regional Science Fair, Heritage Fair, and the Parkview Graduation, as well as Employment Solutions Society has 4 job fairs that they're making use of from April to June, and work continues to prepare for the 55+ games. For a full list of updates, I encourage you to view the agenda and minutes on the LCLC website, and that ends my report.
Thank you for that comprehensive report. Would you like to give your deputy mayor's report?
That one will be more brief. Agenda briefings, checks, signings, and all meetings as assigned. I also attended the annual fishing derby on the weekend that Councillor Burns had brought up, and I'm glad to say the bugs did not attend. I was told it was too cold. Normally there is lots of bugs, but it was really great to see, as Councillor Burns said, the intergenerational users that come to that. It's grandparents, parents, and kids, and they make a morning out of it.
I should have asked if anyone had questions on the LCLC report. Councillor Smith, sorry about that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, so that the audited finances are coming back for the September meeting. We've been talking about getting things back on schedule with financial reporting. So when would the next audited finances come back if we're on schedule?
I don't think we're off schedule on the audited statements.
Okay.
The actual accounting function is now being coordinated between the Joint Services Board, are providing services to the LCLC, and working through some of the issues that we had in terms of the financial reporting. And I think to speak to that, I think the board was feeling much more confident in the level of supervision and accounting procedures that were being followed.
Okay.
And there were a number of changes made to accommodate that. So I think we're feeling now that we're going to get much better reporting, but the audit function is typically done in July, and we'll get it in our fall meeting.
Okay, perfect, thanks.
Any other questions for Deputy Mayor Vino? Okay, I'll give my report then. In my previous life, I always planned by quarters of the year, but I called them spring, summer, and fall because in the farm market world, they were very unique as worlds, those quarters. They were distinct in many ways, and the business that came from that were very different. So in my own head, I am applying the same planning strategy to work here at Council as I think about things and try to help us as a group lead our way through the priorities, and working with Tom, our CAO, and the rest of staff. We have, you will have seen that in our strategic planning documents, we've reviewed and adjusted our work based on the workload and the staff recommendations. And we've started to see projects come before us that fall in line with that strategy of Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 that we've identified for this year and right into 2026. I wanted to take a moment to update us because I think it is important that we look back to say, what did we want to get done in Q1? Did we do it? And if we didn't get finished, why, and when is it coming forward? Because that's the only way we will continue to move ourselves along in getting things accomplished. And I think my general sentiment is that you all, as councillors, want to see us get things done. And I certainly, as your mayor, want to get things done. So I think today is a good time to take a few minutes just to think about what we have gotten done, what is still outstanding, and to say that I think we are overall on target, doing the things that we said we would do. We are doing, and some of them we have completely taken off our agenda. We can put a check mark. So we should celebrate this, folks, a little bit. So I'm going to highlight some of those. And it is a credit not only to the council, but to the staff who work really carefully and diligently and never say, no, we can't do that. They always say, well, we can figure this out at some point. So first of all was the budget, and for us, for new councillors, it was a steep learning curve to know what goes into that. And we know that for the coming year, for 26-27, whatever the next budget year is, we will start it earlier, and we will have a little more time to consider it. But we will also refreshing our strategic priorities, looking at them, just seeing where we are and how we incorporate that into our planning for the coming year. But for this year, we have our budget in place, and I know that for the people in the finance department and the other staff, it's a huge relief. There's a beautiful budget document that's been presented, and I want to say to staff how much I appreciate that document. I look at it regularly, and now that I have a nice bound copy of it, I really appreciate it. It's budgets can be, and budget documents can be really boring. Ours is not boring, and I know that there's been recognition given to the work that's done to put that together for our staff, recognition for the work that they do. We've addressed nuisance bylaws, we've addressed cluster development, which are big accomplishments, issues that have been on the agenda for council for several years, but ones that we can now say we are seeing the beginning or the end, however you want to look at those. The considerations around the solar garden project, we have decided at our council meeting to take this off our agenda, that this is not a project that for us at this point is feasible, and it puts an end to that. We have restarted the public engagement process on municipal planning, and this is a big undertaking and one that all councillors have been very committed to being involved in and very diligent in supporting staff in the meetings and me as your mayor in answering questions and listening to people and being in front of people on this. And we will work through it. We're I think, halfway with the first round of public meetings, but we will continue to work on that. We've agreed on pickleball courts and worked with volunteer group to establish that in our community. We've advanced plans for the public space in the Lumia building, now renamed to Well Tide Health Center. And there have been community discussions started in the last couple of weeks in both the New Germany area and here with some of our councillors leading the discussions around thoughts around preventative and wellness centers and what our community needs might be as it relates to the idea that's being proposed for the Well Tide Health Center. We have also consulted extensively with the community about their thoughts for the community space. And just to reiterate, because several people have asked me, and for the public record, the building is being privately built by Partners for Care with private developers, and the municipality has committed to leasing space. The municipality sold the land. We are not building the building. We are leasing space in the building, which will be for community use. And we are working on plans for that. We got good community input, and our staff are now working on proposals around how we can manage that space so that it's perhaps out of the hands of the municipality and managed by a group that could do this, and also provide public space in a way that will be useful to the community. We finalized just a few minutes ago the terms of reference for the Regional Growth Committee, which I think we all recognize is long overdue, and will provide both our council and the town of Bridgewater with good, I think, good recommendations. I'm being positive about that because I don't see any reason why it can't be good for both of us, and we'll work hard to make it a really important part of our decision-making and governance structure. We've advanced the planning on public transit, and I look forward, as I know all of you do, to a report on what that will look like and when it will be ready. We've initiated discussions on regional economic development through the CAOs, mayors, and deputy mayors meetings, and we will be hosting here at MODL that meeting with the other mayors and deputy mayors in 2 weeks, and one of the top priorities for discussion will be around regional economic development and a structure that could help to champion some of the initiatives that I think we would like to see here. I've had personal discussions with the president of the Bridgewater Chamber of Commerce. Councillor Brooks and I have spoken about this, as well as a number of other people. Councillor Brooks has been involved in some of the work of the Chamber over the last number of years. And so there's, I think, a good desire to, and I've met with the mayor of Queens and the mayor of Bridgewater on this as well. And I think there is a general agreement that the work of municipalities is to support the work of business in driving economic development, and that our work in organizing structure will be that we can help facilitate this, but that the decision-making needs to be, again, driven by business for this, or whatever this organization might look like. So there's a general agreement about how this might look. The details of what might happen and how we'll progress with it, those are things that we'll be discussing with the other mayors and deputy mayors in a few weeks. And we're committed to looking at some funding. I know that our staff are looking at funding to support how we might look at getting this organized and what's needed to put an organization in place. What remains left over, I think, from Q1 into Q2 is issues around accessibility of washrooms in some of our parks. We've had a number of discussions here at council, but we haven't reached a conclusive decision. We've budgeted money, and I think there will be some decisions we'll have to make about that in very short order. And the final report and decision around the food hub is still outstanding. We've had an interim report, but we haven't reached a final report on that or final recommendations on that. So those are two items that we really will need to tidy up over the next number of weeks. I want to thank you all for your efforts in advancing these items and working so diligently on behalf of the municipality. There have been a lot of community events, and obviously the invitations sometimes come to the mayor, but all of you have stepped up to make sure that those events are covered if I'm double booked, and that I appreciate that very much, particularly this week, with several of us being away, leaving on Thursday for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. There seems to be a lot on this weekend and over the next few days, and I thank the councillors who've stepped up to take those responsibilities and participate in community events, which I think if we're invited, we need to show up. And I think it means a lot to groups when we do show up and participate, or in whatever way they want us to be there. Sometimes it's just to be present. This past week, I met with Derek Mumbercat, who's the caucus chair for the Provincial Liberals, and outlined some of our priorities and concerns on economic development, cell service, and downloading of responsibilities from the provincial government. Mr. Mumbercat he was doing a tour of the province and contacted our municipality, and I think he met also with Mayor Mitchell. Finally, I did have the pleasure of reviewing the Niobe Sea Royal Canets Sea Cadet Corps, their annual cadet inspection, which I knew very little about the Sea Cadets, other than I knew we had a group here and often see them show up at our Remembrance Day events. But it was a special event attended by parents and family members where the cadets showcased their skills in communication as it relates to their work, knot tying, navigation, and marksmanship. So, and marching, because they did a whole march past, and Mayor Mitchell and I and MLA Susan Corkum-Greek did a review of the 21 cadets that were present for that event. So I think that highlights the things that I want to pass on to council, and I think that brings us to the end of our agenda, but we do have several items for in camera, and we probably have time to do one before lunch? No? Yes? Okay. Yes.
Well, the other one is at 1:15. The other one's
Right.
scheduled for-
The other one we have scheduled for shortly after lunch. So if we could have a motion to move in camera? Moved by Councillor Oikel, seconded by Councillor Burns. All in favor signify by raising their hand. Motion is carried unanimously, and we will move in camera.
I just wanted to note that the access awareness flag raising is 15 minutes.